Yeah, so the project came about through a conversation with Arts Catalyst, where wanted to explore the themes that we have been investigating in Finding Fanon series, Finding Fanon 1, 2 and 3, and but wanted to take it further, and it was seen that maybe an investigation into how the increasing use of DNA testing is being used could be an interesting way of pursuing that.
Yeah. I think for us, even toward the end of the Fanon trilogy, we knew there were additional conversations that we wanted to kind of agitate, as it were. I think particularly with conversations around DNA. I think that's been quite a more and more popular conversation as we speak. It's something that is definitely being pushed into the mainstream. People are doing tests to find where they're from, through data that has been, taken from specific people.
Yeah, we were interested in the history of science and race, and how those have been intimately intertwined, and kind of prejudices kind of burnt in from early times. And one of the stories was around Darwin and the fact that he had been taught taxidermy by John Edmonstone, who's a freed slave in the late 1800s up in Edinburgh. Darwin's thoughts that came about through his bugle voyage, etc., came from these taxidermied birds. So, and looking at different specimens and thinking of what species they are, and saying, well, this longer beak comes from this place, and this shorter beak comes from this place, and maybe there's something interrelated. Through our research, we've found that a lot of his presumptions were actually incorrect in terms of the placement of these birds, but the general idea of evolution was correct, and that's kind of what the legacy of that. But would it have occurred if he hadn't come across John Edmonstone? We don't know. So it sort of is part of that story.
The peculiar kind of thing, and even the irony with the story between Edmonstone and Darwin is, if you think historically around that moment in time, we're looking at a point in time in which it is believed by white people that black people of color, are of like lower intelligence, and these kinds of ridiculous notions. Yet you have somebody within such a position teaching Darwin skills that enabled him on his developments of ideas around DNA. Video games have a huge connection and significance, not only with mine and David's practice and our relationship, collaboratively, but also individually. But within this instance, as we kind of embarked upon looking at DNA from a social and also political point of view, we began to think about games that we completed in our past. So video games like Metal Gear Solid, which was released in 1998, Hideo Kojima video game, Resident Evil, which would have been produced by Shinji Mikami-san, right? The Final Fantasy series, and the Metroid series. All games of which, from kind of different points of view, consider DNA, the idea of the manipulation of DNA kind of being used as a politicized weapon.
I hope that through this exhibition people gain a wider understanding of both the politics and the reality of DNA testing. That is, it's a very intimate thing. You swab your cheek and you send off this thing, and you're actually giving a part of yourself to this corporation, whether they are allowed to kind of disseminate it or not. It's there inside their data banks. We often use ourselves as anthropological subjects in our work, thinking about ourselves and our position in the world. So, in a way, this was us kind of taking that to that next level, to actually kind of take part of ourselves and put that out into as a subject to be analysed and tested. And then, what does it mean to be the subject of that testing? This is a subject that's going to become more and more relevant to everyone as insurance companies, as the government start using ideas around DNA and health to define who you are and what you're allowed to do. So I think it's important to understand all of the ideas, ethics and problems with this strictly scientific understanding of personhood.
I'd say first and foremost, mine and David's collaborative practice is a conversational one. It's a social one. It bridges a space in which we are able to discuss our thoughts, our feelings, our ideas in an intimate manner, to be able to open up how we think about the world. This is perhaps the first time where we've had the chance to, whilst developing a commissioned work, we've thought about, okay, well, it's not simply just the projection video, but how does that conversation continue with the space that we have, with the time that we have, and how do we add complexity to that? So I think that's certainly what viewers will encounter when they come to this show. It's not simply just one video that is about a conversation, but really there's a multitude of things, really.
Yeah, it's the first time that we've actually developed a project with a space and thinking about that space and that particular kind of set of ideas for a couple of years to pull together a show. So it's been a really interesting journey.
It feels very new, even for the 5 going on perhaps 6 years even of our relationship. All of this for us feels very new.